record today on our Genius Entrepreneur Mastermind because we've actually got two couples. This is our first, it's our first gem foursome, if I can call it that, which is very exciting. So we actually have, first of all, got all the way from the UK, Richard and Kerry. Hi, guys.
Hi, Roger.
And then we also have got Deborah and Jeremy all the way over in Australia. Hello.
Hey, Roger.
Hi.
So it's going to be a super awesome call because this gives us a chance to really talk about how you build team. Everyone that I just mentioned, they have had this journey that they've been on, and we're going to hear more about that in a moment. You're going to have a chance to ask some questions. We're going to have people posting. Let me share, first of all, the couple of places that everyone should be looking at right now. So I'm sharing my screen at the moment. First of all, I'm in the Genius Entrepreneur Mastermind Facebook group. This is going to be the last month that we're going to be using the Genius Entrepreneur Mastermind Facebook group as the main means of communication, because we now have got a way that we're doing it all on Genius U. We just haven't activated it yet for our mastermind. So you can see there's an image here, and I'm just going to say hi, everyone. Where in the world are you? And just post down where you happen to be in the world at the moment, so you can connect up with other people on this group as well. So that's on the Facebook group, and then where people are actually posting or watching is here, which is the Mentor Circle. So here is the Genius Entrepreneur Mentor Circle, this one here. So I'm just going to open this one up here as well. Live video here, and just want to make sure that the live video is now working. Hey, Penny, can you just double check and just let me know if the video is working okay here at the moment? Let me. Oh wait, are people posting? Maybe they are. Wow, okay, all right, okay. It looks like everyone's already moved over. That's actually quite funny. Okay, they've already got used to actually posting in here instead. So let me actually say that and say, please go ahead and post, in the GSU chat here. All right, so, well, we might as well make the move because everyone seems to be like already moving towards it. So Jasper's already posted here from Denmark. If you guys go to that link here, then you will see that you can actually post down below. And we're going to make this automatic, but at the moment you can just click the new comments, and you can see here, we've got Tamsin from Brisbane, we've got Jerry from Glasgow, Ransky says, yes, I can see you, Glenn from Paris, Lane from Sydney. So everyone's starting to post. Danny's in here from London. So everyone's starting to post in here, and I'll keep on coming back and refreshing this for comments and questions that people will have here as well. Oh, hello, Michelle. So we're going to do that first of all. Secondly, let me just come to a few of the highlights from the August successes that are in here. So people have already been posting these down as well. We have Vrensky here who says, we have doubled our business in the last 12 months. A little bit of a surprise to me is I haven't kept track. Sorry, Roger, bad girl. I know I have made some major inroads with Papoose Toys, retail site builds, engaged social media person. So doubling up is super awesome, and scheduling shooting short videos in Sri Lanka, Nepal, India, and USA. So really cool stuff for Rensky to be doing that. For those of you who have been all part of our World Game, which I think is a lot of you, you'll see we've now got it under current round. We actually have Deborah, who's on the call right now, and her daughter, Laura, who are actually in first and second place at the moment. And you can actually go back and look at either the current round, or you can look at the previous round, or you can even look at the total impacts and also total for the entire game so far. So you can see here, Diane's in the lead with 74,911, Rensky's in here for 72,644. Everyone is more than welcome to go in and actually change these rankings as we are on the call right now as well, but really great to see all the results that are coming through. And this actually allows us to kind of like see it, obviously, not just for people, but also for the different circles, for the different cities. And we can see the current round as it's playing out, and obviously the last rounds as well. So we've got now quite a number of different cities. If I actually show the total, we've got about 70 cities on here. And in terms of number of people that are on here, I think we're just around about 2,000 in total. If I go to total impacts, we should be able to see, yeah, 200, there's 10 on each page. There's like over 2,000 people now that are actually on the game as well, which is very, very exciting. So great to see all of this growth that is happening. And Rensky's done really well leading up to that. Let's take another one. Here's Elaine here. Such limiting clarity after each adventure. So thank you so much. I'm now focused on building new road properties with a killer team, so I can soon move on to my passion for astrology and numerology. And so this is her story here. I'm also super pumped for the Performance Consultant Workshop in December in Bali. All very exciting. So some really great stuff people are posting down here. Do make sure you post your own successes and questions, and we will take a few of these questions on this call as well. Okay, so with that being shared, what I'm now going to do is I'm going to come over to the different people we have on the call here. This here is 2 images. This one was in Tau. So you can see here at the moment, Richard Kerry and their family who were at Tau. This one was taken last week at my 50th birthday party. And you can see 2 sumo wrestlers here. This is Deborah and Jeremy with me in the middle. Super awesome that we have 2 couples with their families getting very involved in everything that we're doing, and then seeing their own businesses kind of grow and evolve through the whole process of being part of Crystal Circle and part of our community as well, which is really great. So what I'm going to do to kick it off is I'm going to come over to Deborah and Jeremy, and I'm going to ask you guys just to share how we first of all got in contact, like how you first became part of the community and what your main focus was at the very beginning, right? And then I'll just ask you a bunch of questions that kind of lead us from there to where we are today. So over to you guys.
I have to start this one, I think. Yeah, so Jeremy is a creator profile and I'm a mechanic profile, and his inbox for his emails got out of control. So I set some rules around his inbox and I said, Wealth Dynamics, what's this? Can we get rid of that? And he goes, no, you should actually so totally do that test. And I said, well, show me what it gives me at the end. So he showed me the outcome of the test. And I said, well, I'm going to come out a mechanic. Do I actually need still to take the test? He said, well, there's an event coming up. And so I took the test. I came out a mechanic, big surprise. And then we went to the event. And while he was still working out whether we should join Crystal Circle, I was down the back of the room and I said, I only need to know one answer, which credit card? So that was it, because it was the thing that we were missing, right? It was the thing that we had lots of things happening in the business, and we knew that we had to change the business model, but there was no real indicator of how to change a business model. The accounting industry was changing business models very slowly. And they were changing in just tiny little things that they were doing, but they weren't really changing massively what they were doing in the accounting space. And we didn't need an accounting business model. We needed a different business model. And so that was really what inspired us to say we need a different approach and a different mentor. So we had some great mentors in the accounting profession and in the accounting industry, but we didn't have a good global perspective on what business needed. Good comment. I'm going to add.
Yeah.
Well, so this was how many years ago we're talking about now?
3.5. I first did my profile test, I think, probably 7 years ago.
Right.
And didn't pay attention to the emails until Deb cleared out the inbox.
Yeah.
Because I saw emails that said, oh, you can come to this thing in Bali. And I thought, well, if I go to the event, I will probably sign up to do the thing in Bali. And if I do that, well, that will just be another thing that I do but don't do anything with. But actually, with Deb prompting us to go to the event and realizing that we could actually take action from the programs and from the mentoring was the realization.
And it's funny, I'm usually the one that is very skeptical and won't sign up for stuff, and he's usually the one who's already signed it, and I'm going, hang on a tick, how are we paying for that? And we just totally flipped in that instant. I'm down the back signing up, and he's there going, hang on a tick, how are we going to pay for this? Don't matter.
So from there, obviously at that point, your main focus was the accounting company, was Gilmore working in partnership. Do you want to just share the shift in thinking from that to now starting up your own thing, and even the decisions that you wanted to make in terms of what was going to be different about what you were going to be doing with your kind of accounting skills compared to what you were doing at Gilmore?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The biggest realizations for me have been around spectrum levels, and in fact, a significant understanding was when I realized that although I already had a team of around 20, which I bought into, I didn't start the accounting firm. So diverting away from spectrum levels for a moment, as a creator, I think I always felt as though I hadn't started it. But in terms of spectrum levels, I realized that I had this team, but I was actually still operating at yellow myself. And although in some ways we were green, we were kind of trampolining maybe from even sometimes red up to blue, but the realization was that we couldn't truly move to green ourselves as the owners of the business if we didn't have yellow level team who we could rely on and delegate to. And the realization that we were trying to be green with orange level team was significant. I realized that that's where the gap was. The model of many accounting firms is very traditional, and the partners are still seen as the main go-to people for clients, especially the more valuable and significant clients. And that is definitely not a blue level strategy, and it even makes it hard to be green in that situation. So whilst for many years I'd been trying to bring in a different influence into the business, the culture, in the end, in the last 12 months, I just really decided that rather than try to change that culture, because we were only 50% owners in that business, and rather than try to push against what the culture already was and what the team had already signed up for, that I was actually becoming the one who didn't fit into the team. And so it was the right move for us, and in some ways a good move for them as well, for us to be able to move on and we can do our own thing.
And probably in the background, anytime that we'd been trying to do something different, we had a separate company set up, and we would use it as our skunk works, and we would experiment and see, is this something that's marketable through this other company? And it's that company that we've actually twisted to then take forward the CFO company, because we said, well, if we were to do what we're doing now in the Skunkworks projects and just make it actually the projects that we're spending all our time on, how much more profitable would that be? But also just how much more enjoyable would that be, where we could actually reward people for non-time-based performance. And there are some people in that accounting firm who are very much yellow and able to go to green, but just the structure wasn't set up. And I can't even count the number of times Jeremy would come home and say, it's like turning the Titanic. And that's how it felt.
Yeah. So one of I want to pull out a couple of different kind of key things here, and then I'm going to come over to Richard and Kerry, because these are also relevant for everyone who's looking at going from yellow to green at the moment, where yellow is one person doing all things and green is all people doing one thing, right? And you're always going to attract whatever's the level below you. So yellow is going to attract orange level order takers who are going to do whatever you tell them to do, which means you can never get to green level as long as you're still surrounded by the same people that got attracted to you at the yellow level, which means you actually got to then say, well, at the moment, I'm trying to get up to a green level. I need to actually have some yellow level people around that can actually go out and run P&Ls and actually run profit centers that lift me up. And I'm going to be thinking more about how I'm going to move to blue level to even get to green. So that's one really, really important point that you just heard for those who are looking to do this. And then the second one is this whole element, which is it's impossible to get to green level if you're still charging for your time. So if you haven't yet productized, if you haven't yet, if you're still charging for by the hour, or even if you're just charging for your services for your own time as well, it's not going to get you to a level where you can have other people represent your products. But the moment you can actually have a benefit linked to a product, and it's something like accounting, it is about actually looking at the future, right? So let me just share my screen for a moment, where I'll share both of the websites, right, for our two couples on the call. So I actually posted them down on here as well, right? So you can see everyone's been posting on here. Deborah's here from Cape Town, as is Janie. We've got like Neves from London, Michelle from Johannesburg. So a whole bunch more people have come and joined us on here as well now, which is great. And what I'm going to do, actually, because as people keep posting here, I'm actually going to give you the links to everybody's different profiles on here as well. So here's Richard's link. So you can see here, quality education, top purpose, top passions, Dynamo Genius. So I'm going to drop Richard's in here. So you've got that one. And then I'm also going to drop in here Kerry's one. So here's Kerry, right? So there's Kerry's one here. Still energy, poverty, as no poverty is the main thing here. So let me drop that in here as well. So you got that. And then I'm also going to drop in Jeremy and Deborah's, which are here. Well, there's my one actually. So there's me, and then let me come back to Jeremy and Deborah. Here we go. Okay, so here's Deborah's one. And I will also drop in Jeremy's one. So if each of you just drop in your own profile, so people can, because the challenge at the moment is with the Facebook comments is it doesn't link directly to your profile. So if we have where your profile is, that would be super awesome, and we can then get people connecting with each other on here as well. But what I'm gonna do is talk a bit about, first of all, this is the Grow CFO Co-company now. So what happened, and we'll get more into this, but what happened is Jeremy, first of all, came on board as virtual CFO for Entrepreneur Resorts as we went through our public listing. And then from there is now taking on the role with others as well. And between Deborah and Jeremy, they're helping companies to actually look at their future numbers and how to really maximize their cash flows, as opposed to just looking at like audit numbers or like the past numbers, right? Because that's where the real value is for companies that are looking to grow but can't yet or don't yet want to afford a full-time CFO. So having a virtual CFO makes a whole lot more sense to do that, right? And then we've got T-Shirtify, which is Richard and Kerry's business, which is, I'm going to let them explain a bit about their story, about how this came about and the way that they're now productizing this as well. And a lot of this has to do with actually choosing your customer. Almost always, when you're going from yellow to green level, you need to upsize your customer. In the case of Jeremy and Deborah, they had to think who really is our customer, and it was people who are at a high level, because those people actually have more affordability. Almost always you have to upgrade your customer going from yellow to green, because you want people that actually are able to buy things at a high level, give you high margins, that can then afford your leadership team. Because if you don't have those high margins, you can't afford a leadership team, which means you're stuck having to try and do it all yourself. So exactly who your customer is going to be and how you're going to design the growth of the business has everything to do with whether or not you can even be green level or not. And I'll look at some companies and go, well, they can't even go to green level because their customer level is too low to get there as well. So keep that in mind when it comes to actually having to kind of re-engineer the next level up. So let me stop sharing again, and let me come over to Richard and Kerry. And I'd love you guys also just to share, how did we first meet? And then what was the genesis for T-Shirtify? And then I'll ask you a bunch of questions around that as well. Hi, guys.
Hi.
Hi.
So similar to Jeremy, really, I'm a creator, and I did probably my Wealth Dynamics profile quite a few years before I came to an event, and it sort of sat there with me thinking, who am I? Who do I want to be? All the rest of it. But it kind of sat there for a while, and then I was looking for some new mentors and came across yourself again. I thought, I'll dig that email out. And so I sort of re-engaged with the profiles. And at the time, I was starting to build a small team around me. It certainly wasn't a yellow level team at that time. But I was very interested in trying to figure out who would fit into the right roles. So I started doing that and seeing the benefit of it with the team. And then decided to come to the Fast Forward event. I think it was 3 years ago now in London. And at the time, the business was in a place that I really didn't want it to be. It was, we'd got a successful e-commerce business and were trying to find a way to utilize the new technology that we'd invested in terms of printing. And we'd gone in a certain direction with a certain client base, and I wasn't very happy the way that was going. It was difficult to deal with their teams and all the problems that there. So I was kind of at the point where, do I want to carry on doing this business, or do I really want to do something else? And I had this kernel of an idea that I'd had for a while, which was around really trying to deliver more value to smaller clients, because the clients we had at the time were quite big corporate clients. And I just thought, that feels like it's right to me, that we can deliver a hell of a lot more value in terms of everything we've built up in experience in our own business. And so I took that kernel of an idea to Fast Forward with the idea that I was trying to find a coach or a mentor. And then sat through Fast Forward, and I filled an entire notebook of, this is the right idea that I've got. And I'm super inspired by thinking of the world in a completely different place, as a different place to how I originally thought it, through the sort of the future first sort of aspect of the stuff that you teach, Roger. And so I basically mapped it out over the space of 2 days what that company was going to be. And of course, I go back and the company's still the same. And I'm going, guys, the future's here. I know what I want to do. I know what the company needs to be and all the rest of it. But they just see this crazy person when I first come back, basically. So when I was speaking to Kerry about it and you were doing your profile.
Yeah, I'm a creator profile as well, which can have its issues within the business. But essentially, we've got quite a creative business, really. I'll just explain, Roger. We do printed products. So we do printed T-shirts on demand for our clients. And we actually help them to build their businesses as well. So we offer services, digital marketing. We give them all sorts of data and insights that our competitors don't do. So we actually offer them a lot more value. But yeah, since I came on board with the whole Wealth Dynamics and Entrepreneurs Institute and everything, we've just run with it, really. And the team are fully bought into it. They actually came to Fast Forward last year with us, and yeah, we're taking them along this year.
So I should probably say actually that then that whole year I started to unpick the business, and Kerry got more involved in thinking about this idea, and then came to Fast Forward the second year with some of our team, and then Kerry was doing what Deborah was, which is like let's go to iLab, and we need to go to iLab, and I'd wanted to sign up the year before, but I was kind of like, I better not just do this. It's probably not the right thing to do right now. They'd be so impulsive about the whole thing. And so we went to iLab, and then we completely developed the idea at iLab and just really thought about what was important to us and how we really wanted to deliver value. I think that's the main thing we got out of iLab, as well as going on a personal journey for ourselves and really understanding where we sat in the spectrum was super valuable to us, really, because everything else kind of spins out from there. That self-awareness and that self-knowledge really about yourself and your team.
And that decision of actually getting really, really super clear that you were going after influencers, right? I mean, like, because you could be going for what's after all sorts. You could go for schools that are looking for T-shirts. You can go for, but actually, like saying, okay, if we're going to really do this well, then actually let's go out to these influencers that actually have their own followings already, and then build that, and then actually going from that, and then obviously that. I mean, if you just share how the business grew last year, because you were at iLab, I think, beginning of 2017, right?
Yeah. February.
So what was the kind of growth you saw through last year and getting some of these influencers on board? And then there was the thinking about, okay, well, should we have our own store? And should we be thinking at a high level to have something that's a platform that can actually grow beyond just our top clients as well? Can you take us through that kind of journey?
Yeah, so at iLab, we invited us to join Crystal Circle, which we did, which felt like totally the right thing to do at the time to sort of keep the momentum going through. And at the time, I think we'd got like one client, and he turned out to be almost our ideal client because of the audience size that he had, the problems that he had as a creative type person himself, because he's an artist, and we really just spent all the time on him, on him and a couple of other clients, basically, just really focusing in on what is it they really want and completely adapting and not pivoting, but really adding the value where we could and looking at our competitors to sort of say, well, they don't do that, we can do this because we're coming from a different space. I think what we realized on that journey was that all our competitors are focused on the product. We know our product is better than theirs because of the investment that we've made in there. But where our real value is really understanding them from the front end, which is the problems that they have, specifically, knowing exactly what our ideal client is, and then giving them the tools to empower them to make better decisions about their business. So we kind of like can convert. So over the course of that year, we grew we grew reasonably. And then it sort of accelerated towards the end of the year, and we officially the company officially started and got split out from our other companies in January this year. Yeah, but we've grown it sort of probably about 8 to 10 times since we came from iLab, since we went through iLab. Sorry.
Yeah. And the team as well. The team's grown, so there's what 13 of us, and we've put in key senior members as well who We've got a key supporter who's just there doing all the people stuff for us. He's doing some strategy work.
He's our interpreter.
Yeah, he just translates everything, everything that we say and put it into a strategy and makes it happen. So yeah, we've learned a lot this past year, and we've really learned to kind of get all the foundations right in place. So we've absolutely kind of perfected efficiency and all the automation that we can get into place to set us up to then just throw, you know, a whole load more clients in to really excel in the next 18 months or so.
So I'm gonna add one extra thing in here, then I have a question for all of you there as well. So let me just share my screen again. And I want to make a really important distinction, because some of the distinctions we've already made about going from yellow to green is you have to be, you know, you're getting to green because you're actually now attracting yellow level people. You know you're going from yellow to green when you then have a high level of client that you're now focusing at bringing on board, and they're coming on board. And then the most important thing is that you're expanding the value that you're delivering. So like most accountants, you know, the problem they're solving is a really basic problem, which is I've got to get my tax done, I've got to get my audits done, right? And so people will go for the lowest price to do that. Or you can say a t-shirt company could be basically the problem I'm solving is I need to find a cheap way to actually get my t-shirts done on demand. And so again, you're going to be competing on price. So the moment you're competing on price is very difficult to get to green level. But the moment you start competing on value by expanding value, it's a whole different thing. So the moment T-Shirtify says, no, the problem that we see here, creating time, wealth, freedom, and identity for independent brands and artists, that's so much more than printing T-shirts, right? You're actually solving a different problem, which is you've got a great brand, you've got a great community, and you're not monetizing it with merchandise in a simple, easy way, right? We're going to help you to do that. So you've got a very big problem, which is way bigger than just I need some T-shirts. Is I want to be able to monetize it more effective way for my community. This solves that and helps me to do that. Or in the case of, you know, Grow CFO, right? For every CFO engagement, this is what they're doing right now for supporting communities, like working in other areas as well. But the biggest thing for the Grow CFO side is that you've actually got in here a different problem that you're actually solving, which is it's not like how do I actually just get my audit done or my taxes done. It's how do I really make sure that I've actually got a strategic plan for my financials such that I'm growing the way that a large company would grow, where I'm being smart about the value of my business, right? And how do I do that when I can't afford a full-time CFO? And the answer is, well, you get a virtual CFO. So really, really super important that you're actually expanding the actual problem that you're solving. And in most cases, as you can see in both these companies, you've actually got an ROI. You've got a return on investment, which is if I'm going to pay money to T-Shirtify, if I can then show I'm actually going to be making money from that, then of course I'll come back again and again. Or if I'm paying money to Grow CFO Co, and then I can see how much money I'm making in addition to that, then it just becomes a no-brainer to then actually then go out and tell other companies that are also the right companies to actually come on board to be part of it as well. So think about that for everyone listening to this call. You know, how could you actually expand both your customer base to a high level and the way that you're actually then designing the problem you're solving to be a bigger problem that you're solving as well. Okay, so I wanted to make that point, but I also have a question around team, because both of you are fortunate to already be couples and then actually have a way to work with each other, because most couples can't work with each other as well. And then figure out the best ways to work together. And the very first step to having a team is to have a second person, especially someone who's like a peer at the same level as you. But then the real question, and so for anyone who's listening who's still on your own, the first job is not to get a team. The first job is to get an equal. Huge difference. Getting a team means you've still got everyone reporting to you. Getting an equal means you've got someone that you're now going to actually have compensate for or collaborate with or get a consensus with, which makes you think differently straight away, because every time there's a decision to make, you don't knee-jerk into a decision. You actually start by saying, well, what would Kerry think, right? Or what would Deborah think? Or what would Richard think? And then from there, you then have that conversation. And you always end up with a very different place you go to by having to think it through and having a conversation about it than if you just kind of like just went with it, which is almost always the wrong way to go, because it means you haven't actually had any consultation as you go as well. So so for those who aren't yet at a point where you've got your second in command or your peer, your equal, you've got to find that person first, right? Even if it's someone that just is on board on a strategic level or working with you, checking in once a week, but that's the first step to green level. in your case, like, has it always been pretty easy? I'm going to come to Richard and Kerry first. Have you always figured out a way to work together, or was it kind of rocky at times, and then you figured it out? What advice would you give to those that are just getting into the position where you guys are in right now?
Have we always figured it out? No, I don't think we've completely figured it out now. But I think certainly we always intended that. I mean, I've been in business since I was 20, and Kerry went through a pretty great career path in terms of working at some great great companies. So you bring that sort of expertise to the table. I think, though, once we decided we're going to have kids, then Kerry's career had to sort of stop, and we sort of thought, well, we really want to work together. We didn't quite know what that was, but the intent certainly was there. And then we just started trying it. I think Kerry started working on our other business for a bit, and then we decided we're going to start a whole new business, which is a property business, which is kind of on the side. But we really don't really enjoy that, and we've got someone else running that. And so it did happen well for us at the time, didn't it? In terms of being able to start with an idea and then talk about it together, and then go through the same experience together. If I was going to try and give advice to people about how to do that themselves with someone else, I think there's generally always someone in your team that you know can be raised up to another sort of level, and it was certainly speaking your language. So I think that the point that you made there is so true. I think it's a decision really. Are they the right person? Give them the opportunity to actually try that, to try and to align to they'll be aligned to your strategy anyway, but to really become part of it, and to then give them the opportunity to prove it to you, and then reward them in such a way that they do actually feel part of it, whether that's equity, share options, whatever that might be. So
I think what I'd say is, we've never sort of known, the answers straight away to things, but we've both got the approach really that we've just learned. We just have to try it, even if it's not right. You're still going to be in a better position because you will have learned from the outcome than if you're too sort of risk averse and don't bother trying new things. So I think we're both of that mentality, which really helps.
Sure, yeah.
And that's that's got to us where we are now.
And what would you say in terms of how you're now splitting up your roles and responsibilities?
So although we're both creators, we work in quite different ways, don't we? Rich is quite analytical and sort of strategic, whereas I'm a lot more focused on the people and the relationship side of things, which actually complements quite nicely. So I'm always trying to spot the opportunities for the clients and for the people that we bring on board and for the network, whereas you're a lot more, you can spot the opportunities in how we do things and what we create.
Yeah, I think it's interesting what Deborah said actually, in that I think we were talking about this on the iTunes very briefly, Deborah. I was talking about T-Shirtify X, which is my own little department where I operate, where I have crazy ideas and go and play with them and try and connect to people and spot opportunities and connect some dots up. And without keeping that isolated, without actually dropping creative grenades on the whole team and, trying to change them in direction, just let them keep doing what they're doing. If it's aligned with what the business can do, or it's a fun thing for us to do, more importantly, is it future first for our industry? That's what I'm really, really interested in. I've created my own little bubble where I can go and operate like that, and that's kind of where I fit in, as well as just having all the reporting and everything. So we've got a system, basically a weekly system where the team reports back to us, but by and large we kind of let them get on with it. A great example is I just kind of made a business case for us going for investment before I went away. Literally was the last thing I did before I went to Eaching Adventure, and came back and I went up for a meeting. I went into our boardroom, and our supporter and our mechanic, our COO and our MD had completely mapped out all the critical things that needed to be done. So that's kind of where I sit now, and I got to say that makes me super happy.
Very cool, fantastic. Deborah and Jeremy, how about for you guys? How have you figured it out over time?
Well, I think really with 27 years, we've been working together as a team for 27 years, and I think it's right to say that many times over the years, we've seen similarities between running a family and running a business. And so we really practiced by being a family first. We started working together by Deborah coming and working in the accounting business as a team member, I think around about 7 years ago. I don't know when exactly it formed for me, but I really, more so over the last few years, really had a very strong intention that we work together more so going forward. I think what's really important is that that we come from the same values. And in terms of us starting something new and being the peers like you talk about, then we know that we're aligned in that way. And as we start to bring on team, then that will be the influence. The other thing is that I would say is it's interesting that that I would say we're the opposite to Richard and Kerry, as in, even though I have more of the experience, obviously, with numbers, with my accounting background, I focus more so on the people. Deborah has the analytical and the strategic thinking, and so we're able to mold our roles around that as well. She can have a lot of input into a CFO engagement from the strategy point of view.
Yeah,
I think it's. I think for me it was. I made the choice to work with him because they came to me with, you are the only person we know who can actually do this. And it was never ever about the money side of it. So I had the luxury of being able to make a choice about what I wanted to do time-wise, working with their business. And for me, I want to make that opportunity for everybody time-wise, so that whenever they're working for us, they're working because they're doing what they love to do. And if you take money off the table and make sure that they're paid enough for what they're doing, that they actually just excel at what they love doing. So that's kind of how we've been with the kids all the way through. So it was just a natural extension for us to do that in the business as well. But it's easier to do that in a business where the two of us have a very aligned set of values, as opposed to the business where it wasn't so clearly aligned. So it's easier for us to do this now and easier for it to take off, because we can actually then choose people who we know they have a passion or a purpose and they want to do something with their lives, and we can actually say, well, what is it? How can we help you do that? So it makes it a lot easier for us to even just find talent, and they approach us, which is an interesting thing.
That's fantastic. Very cool. I'm going to share this. Some people said I'm echoing a bit, which is probably because this room I'm in, the Dom's room, is a very echoey room. So I'm turning down the volume so it doesn't echo as much. But let me share my screen again, because we're going to get to a few questions. And then I'm going to be asking you biggest learnings from Eating Adventure, which we just had as well. But just before we do that, I wanted to just share this as reading for everyone who's looking to get to Green Level. So this book, which Anthony D'Souza, who is one of our circle members and also works with us in GeniusU, he shared this book. It's called Rocket Fuel, which is about one essential combination that will get you more out of what you want from your business. Is very specifically about your first two people, your equals, right? And actually talks about them being one being visionary and one being integrator. So they're equal, but one is all about the pathway. One's all about the execution. One's all about strategy. One's all about operations. And so what we just heard was, in the case of Richard and Kerry, Rich is much more kind of visionary, Kerry's the integrator, and also with the likes of Jeremy and Deborah, Jeremy's more the integrator, Deborah's more visionary. But this book actually is a really good book at explaining what the differences are between the two, and knowing that you need to have that between the two of them as you're growing forward as well. And when we've got multiple businesses, like in my different businesses, like something like Entrepreneurs Institute, it was very much Sandra being the integrator, I was the visionary. We then had the whole team around it. And once things got off the ground and then the team could then take it on and then drive that business forward, then Sandra could then move on to Entrepreneur Resorts, which is where she's really the integrator now. And so people take on roles that just work well. And if you've got people that are really complementary with you, that makes a huge difference. So I'm going to take this link and just drop it in here. So anyone who is looking for this distinction, really super important, which is great. Okay, let's come over to a couple of questions, right? So these are actually linked also for the whole yellow to green side. So I'm going to take two questions. The first one is from Saeed here. Sajid says, being bogged down in website development for my new products, was relying on a cousin to do it, but has been taking way too long. So plan to resort to Upwork. Any tips on how to get the best provider? So this is really about how do you actually start building a contract team of people that can work with you, and what's the most important ways to do that so you don't end up with the wrong people or for the wrong person, for too long as well. So I'll come back to you, Richard and Kerry, first. Like, if you were to give Sajid some advice, what have you experienced in terms of actually looking for contract people and the best ways to do that?
I think basically probably if I was going to look at his issue, well, with us, we always tested it first. So we had a clear idea about what we needed to do, but we don't give them the whole pie. We give them a piece of it, sort of say, demonstrate their reactiveness, their capabilities, and their deliverabilities around it, and make sure you can actually work with them at the same time as well. They're the right people to actually work with, and that they can actually add some value that you might not have seen. So it's taking it in bite-sized chunks. I think if you're in a contract, don't go for the whole thing in the first instance, for sure.
And how long does your test normally last for? Like, is it a month or 3 months or a couple of weeks?
It depends on it and how quickly we want to get from A to B. It can be a month. It depends on if it's a critical piece of the puzzle that we know that they might be able to solve, but it could be quite short. Then that's quite a good testing ground. We do sometimes work on sort of promotion plans, sort of in terms of a 3-month cycle as well. So it really depends on the project itself. But I think, it's the communication that if you're contracting out, particularly someone like Upwork, the communication is key, because I've seen so many things go wrong and we've experienced that, and it's no fun.
Exactly. Deborah and Jeremy, what would you add to that?
I would say brief it really well. Know exactly what you want to do, but also use the understanding of the Wealth Dynamics profiles, right? So often when we're so used to putting out job descriptions for people to do a job that has some steel tasks, some tempo tasks, some dynamo tasks, some blaze tasks, just look at the tasks that you need done, break them down into the profile and look for the right profile. Because if you're actually looking for the right profile to do the right task, you'll have much more success. And you'll be able to work out when they respond to the ad, have I got a steel person responding to a blaze task? Just by the way they present themselves in their profile. And if I want someone who's high dynamo, I don't give them a really short lead time for that. I'll give them a longer lead time because their tempo is not great, but they'll do a fantastic job. But if I need something turned around really quickly and it's minimum viable product, I'll go for someone who's really on the ball, that's much more, say, an accumulator. But I won't put a highly creative task out there for that.
Yeah.
Because it's just about knowing who the person is who's actually responding. And I've had someone that I've been using now successfully for a few months that first responded to it was a reasonable size. If you look for the cheapest, you'll get an orange or red level person.
Yeah.
So be prepared to spend in the first instance to attract the quality there, and then engage with them again and again and again, because otherwise you're spending all your time training someone to what you need. Totally.
I want to add to that as well, because it's so critical what you just heard about the whole thing about profiles and the whole thing about testing out as well. Now, more and more, there are now on Upwork and on Freelancer teams that work together. And if you actually go for one of these teams, they're used to actually delivering at a higher scale. They've got the admin person, they've got the communication person. And so you've actually got a team you're getting for the same price as one person. And they actually make more money because they're just good at what they do. And so I'll always start, and this is something that the whole team does as well. When we've got someone new on board, we'll always start by basically kind of shortlisting down to a small number of people, and then know the biggest skill, more than their ability to execute the job, is their ability to manage themselves. So being able to actually, say to people, hey, show us some examples of how you've managed a client that's been difficult to manage to get a job done. Show us what your reports look like. Show us what the result looked like. Because it's easy for someone to look good when they've got a good client. But if they're actually able to show you that and say, oh, here's how we keep on track, here's how we brief people in the beginning, and they can show you how they manage a client, that's who you want, because that means they're going to manage you too, and they're going to actually come on as an expert that knows more about it than you do, and you don't need to manage them, they'll manage you. So be really aware those people exist, but they're only maybe 5 or 10% of the actual market out there. The rest of them will just wait for you to tell them what to do. So you want to find those gems and then be able to do it in such a way that you've got all the right people in place to actually make it work. And we also do this from the point of view of getting them to test, first of all, if they're a designer, if they're, in your case, Sajid, is someone who's going to be a designer. So get them to not just look at, don't just look at their designs, but say, look, if you can take just an hour, take what I'm looking to do right now, put down your rough sketches of what you think you could do better, send them through to me, right? And if they can do that within an hour and show you some really good stuff, you know you're onto a winner, right? Whereas if they can't show you that, they're probably the wrong person to begin with, right? So all good advice. Let me go to a bit more of a tricky question. Or maybe it's not a tricky question, right? But it's a very interesting one because it's very much about green levels. So let me share my screen again. This one is Fran and Friday, okay? So just to give you guys a bit of a background, Fran and Friday joined Crystal Circle earlier this year. They have this company here, which is Sea-Doo Jets, right? Jet skis, right? So it's basically all on like jet skis, Can-Am specials, and they've got their own retail store in Australia on this as well, which is where they're actually making most of their business. So they're doing all of this as well. And you can see the question here, which is, hi Roger, happy birthday, thank you. Can you please list the most important steps to take to move our business from yellow to green? Also, we've added a work with us page on our website. So we talked about that. So you can see now, you can actually kind of like look and see, like, if you want to work with them, how do you join the team? Oh, that's not the right one. So maybe it's on here. Let's have a look. Not easy to see where they are. So if you have added it, guys, I don't see it. So maybe it's at the bottom, maybe. Doesn't look like it. Okay, so if you have added it, it's not obvious on here, which probably is why you're not getting results on it right now. But in any event, let me go through the question. So the question is, we've added a page on our website to attract the right team. Can you recommend any improvements? This is our struggle at the moment to find the right passionate team members to grow with us. So one thing really important after everything we've talked about so far in this call, which is like, what's your model? How are you going to scale? We had a conversation about, well, do you actually want to have more retail stores? And the answer is no, we don't. So then it's like, well, what do you really want? And as it turns out, the reason I even got into this is Friday is already like a competitive racer. And so he's like big, and he wants to get really big on basically the whole kind of like Can-Am side and all of the, all these buggies and things, right? Because it's like a whole growing area right now globally in terms of people racing. And they already do things in terms of like experiences with jet skis and so on, but they're not marketing that on here as well. So there's definitely things you can do which are going to be much more profitable than just looking to sell something once every 6 years or 3 years to someone who comes in and buys. So you can actually market experiences, you can actually run races, get sponsorship in, make money from all of that. And then obviously that then allows you to actually create something which is much more global. So just keep that in mind, that whole idea of being able to actually, shift the model as you go. But then in terms of actually really making sure you're making the right steps to build the team in the right order, I'm going to open it up for you guys to share, just from what you're seeing here on their website and what they do, what advice you'd give to Fran and Friday in terms of how they go from yellow to green. And I'll start with Deborah and Jeremy this time.
I think the first thing I would say is that it's all about that experience thing. So for me, if I was looking for experience in, say, taking a quad bike or a Sea-Doo or something like that out into the ocean, having that capability of doing that with friends, because we have a little sailing vessel, shall we say. But it's always more fun if you do it with other people, if there's a group together. Otherwise, it just becomes a little bit, you sort of invest all this time to go out and do it, and then you're still by yourself doing it. So to make it compelling to go out with other people, once you start to do that and have that experience where you're making other people come out and have fun with you, the supporter profile or the Blaze profile that really loves doing that will actually just jump on board, because they'll love doing it so much. They'll introduce their friends. They'll want to come on board. They'll help you build the experiences. So I think you'll actually attract them naturally just by having the experiences and going out and doing it.
For me, a really important part in terms of building team is to make it clear what our values are. and what we believe in, and what the business stands for. And that's something that's really easy to put on the website as well. You can see that on the sliders on the homepage on our website that a lot of what we're talking about there is about our impact in the world. And so we would hope that that would attract team members who believe in the same thing. So it goes to why. It's about start with why.
Yeah.
Very cool. That's very, very true, because at the moment it's a very product-based website as opposed to something that's actually got a bigger mission, or, you know, the whole idea of getting people outdoors or getting people, you know, involved, you know, on the weekends on things. So like 100%, that whole aspect of culture is a really important one. Coming over to Richard and Kerry, what would you guys share?
Yeah, I mean, we've done the same as well, actually. We started with our why. It took us a long time to get to that. And we worked on it with the team as well, so everyone's working to one common purpose. And in terms of team, we, rather than recruiting for a specific job role, what we do is look at the team and figure out what profile we would like to have on board, what type of person we're missing in the team. And they have actually kind of shown up weirdly when we've needed people.
Yeah.
They've appeared. And, you know, we like I say, we've tested things with them, got them in, and then figured out what they're actually going to do within the company.
Yeah. I think from the, I mean, one of the way we sort of engaged people, even on the factory floor, that kind of aren't sort of driving strategy or any of those sort of things, is linked it to B1G1 and making the impact. And so we don't measure it always, you know, for our financials, obviously we measure all the different metrics we mentioned there, but for key people within that team, we measure impacts. And so each t-shirt, it equals something in the world. In terms of the, and like Kerry said, I think it's weird how once you create the gap, create the vacuum, that people do actually show up. I think just in terms of the website, I'd certainly say, then if I forget what his name, Friday, wanted to, is going down the path of sort of being a professional and being more well known for that sort of thing, that personality, use that personality and that drive to attract people, but also be very, very vocal about it, because that personality will come across on the website and it will just round everything off, and will give reason for people to engage with, and we can build a community around that then.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, totally. I totally agree with that. And I think having that element of the big why, which is the purpose of the company, and then the vision of where it's going, so people go, oh, here's where it's at, here's where it's going, here's why it's going there. We want to be a part of that, because of the vision of how it's actually going to really impact, whether it's families, whether it's you know, a new trend in sport, that people go, I want to be part of that too. And you get people then like saying, you know, there's a space for me in here because I can see they need my support. Then you're going to actually get those guys actually showing up a whole lot more easily. And I'm very, very sure that even amongst your clients at the moment, this is not just for Fan and Friday, but everyone on the call, between your clients, you've already got people that can run businesses or can run teams that would be the right people to come join you if they actually knew there was a gap where you actually needed them as well, right? Okay, guys, I'm going to change gears to the final thing I want to share, which is we obviously just had this I Ching adventure. Let me share my screen again. And while Kerry wasn't on the I Ching adventure, Richard was, and so was Deborah and Jeremy. And we actually shared at, well, this is actually from our Crystal Circle conference, which we actually ran on there as well. And we actually just ran the Entrepreneur Fast Track Japan event. So I want to show you a couple of slides from there as well. But I'm curious to know what would be your biggest learnings, which is where we're going to kind of finish this call, just from that. And I want to kind of start with my one, because what anyone who wants to go and have a look at some of the photos and so on, they're all on here at the moment. This is like some kind of like images of my 50th birthday that happened last week, and all the different experiences are all on here. Like there's loads of photos of things that took place through this as well. And here's one thing that happened when we were at the on our trip, right, which is this 12-day trip. We were out being ninjas and we were doing the samurai thing. In fact, you can see here, here's Jeremy and Deborah right there. And here is the whole team as we were kind of heading out for our party. But this year was one thing that happened, which is we had a tea ceremony, and we were learning all about the samurai code and how the samurai code links into the kind of daily practice about something like drinking tea. And then we were going out to these bonsais where there was like $500,000 worth of koi fish in this pond here, and there were bonsai trees that were worth like $500,000 or $1 million because they're like 1,000 years old, right? And the whole idea that you're growing something for your entire lifetime that will last for 1,000 years, and so the generation after generation that takes this thing on, knowing that their great-great-great-grandchildren will actually be looking after this as well. It's just such a sense of legacy. And one of the people that we met, this guy here, Mr. Iko, who's one of the mentors of Yayoi, who's one of our Crystal Circle members, was telling the whole story about how in Japan is well known for just this proliferation of 100-year-old companies and even 1,000-year-old companies. Like there's like 7 companies that have been there for over 1,000 years. And compared to the rest of the world, over half of all the companies that are over 200 years are all in Japan. And one thing he said, which was really interesting, is he said Japan has no ruins. Like if you go to Egypt, Egypt's got ruins, right? Or you go to Rome, Rome has ruins. There's no ruins in Egypt, in Japan, because in Japan, everything's always kept, like, there's always an upkeep, right? Everything's always looked after, everything's always renewed. So even all the temples, have got new parts to them. And it's just the whole way that Japan works, is that everything is going to continue. And that's how the company should be working as well. So that for me was a huge thing. It's like, wow, what would a 1,000-year vision look like? And that became, like, for me, a big part of us pulling together some of the elements of China, where we have the Confucius family, which links in with the Eightfold Path, which are the steps of enlightenment via the kind of Buddha Eightfold Path, and how this over 2,000 years ago, 2,500 years ago, became the Samurai Code, because these same 8 steps, which are the Eightfold Path, became the Bushido 8 Virtues, which actually link to the 8 different trigrams right on here as well. So I'm not going to go. We went through a lot of it on the actual trip, but there's a link to all of this from like 2,500 years ago, like 500 years before 0 AD, and just this idea of actually pulling all this ancient knowledge and then being able to then think, well, what would life look like 1,000 years from now? And what do we want to actually see with all the things that we're building now? A whole different way of thinking at it from my point of view. But without me going into more on my side, I would love to hear, first of all, Richard, I'd love to hear from you. What would be biggest takeaway from you from just having spent the last 2 weeks in China and Japan with us?
It's tricky because there literally were so many. Every single day, something happened that was amazing, awesome, that really changed your thinking. And I was going to say the same thing about the 1,000-year vision. Is that, but it's also the idea that you are the custodian of something. You're not just, we're not all we always kind of think we're creating a business that it's just us for a path we're following from, we want to sell it off, or we might want to retire, or we might hand it, but it's that sense really that this could be something really long term that could really make a difference, and you are a custodian over it. And that really changed my thinking about how to actually do business. But the other thing really is just the, I've never been on a group sort of tour before, and it's pretty intense, but I think that intensity certainly drives a lot of things, and one of them is kind of like the collective consciousness that everyone kind of goes through, and the openness that everyone had, and just people just kind of showed up in front of you, whether they became the buddy for the day, and everyone shared so much that I literally learned something from every single person I spent time with. So that was it for me. It was it was amazing.
Yeah, that's awesome. That whole element about a compressed community is so important, because then you actually really see the value of just showing up and being around other people as well. And by the way, just before I come over to Jeremy and Deborah, I've actually been looking at all the different comments that everyone's been posting on here. And definitely at this point, you can refer everyone, because we're just coming up to the end of the call. You can definitely also post down whatever is your biggest learning from this call, because we've actually covered some really, really important points when it goes from yellow to green. And there's also, if you're now really enthused about the idea of really starting to push the yellow to green level, I'm going to post a link to this as well, which is the yellow to green micro degree. So you can actually be working over this over the next month as well. So whatever's biggest learning from this call, please do post it down so we can kind of have a read and come back to these. And then let me now come over to Jeremy and Deborah. How about for you guys?
For me, there was a real theme. In the Kung Fu Dojo, we saw the 1-inch punch in China. Then in Japan, we learned about samurai strength with the body position and the headband, and some pretty amazing impact that thinking and that philosophy has. And that made me think, how can I harness and direct my energy in business to have maximum impact with one thing at one time, instead of the wasted energy.
Yeah, absolutely. And Deborah?
I think my single biggest moment was actually in the bonsai garden, when there was a 70-year-old retired man in there, and he goes every day and spends 15 hours in the garden, and he prunes the trees. And someone said to him, why? Why do you do that? And he explained that at this point in time, he is the custodian. He's the custodian of the past generations for the future generations. And for me, it was about, well, if my vision for what I want to achieve in this world, and business is a part of that, but it's only a little part of it. It's what I do in my personal time and with my family as well. If I, instead of saying I own this vision, I say I am the custodian of this vision for the people who came before me, and I'm the custodian of this vision for the people who come after me, then it changes the fact that I can now collaborate so much easier. I can actually pull together people, because it's not mine. I don't have the ownership over it anymore. I'm just the person who's taking off those old leaves and clipping out the new growth to make it shape into something. And watching him work on a tree that was 1,000 years old, and just knowing how many, like, that's 27 generations. And there's maybe another 27 generations to come. So if I can let go of having to own it and can just be a custodian, how powerful that is.
Yeah, very cool. Well, I want to say a big thank you to all of you for joining the call. It's great just being on this journey and just seeing the ongoing growth and partnerships and things that are coming out of this as well. So Richard, Kerry, Deborah, Jeremy, it's been awesome having you on. And thanks everyone for listening in as well. And they're getting a lot of good feedback on the chat at the moment as well from all the kind of learnings that have come through it. So we'll catch up with you on our upcoming course. But otherwise, have a fabulous month ahead, everyone. And thanks very much. See you all later.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
See you guys. Bye.